it doesn't start with a fire. It starts with a shipment. Boxes, thousands of them, arrive in a quiet warehouse. Inside is books, not all ancient scrolls or priceless artifacts, but some are. But there are books, modern, printed, human-made knowledge, novels, textbooks, essays, ideas bound in glue and paper. And then something very specific happens, something that sounds almost surgical. The spines are cut off. The bindings are removed so each page can be flattened, scanned at speed, and digitized perfectly. This is called destructive scanning. It's efficient, it's precise, it's industrial. And after the pages are captured, after every sentence has been extracted and converted into data, the physical books are no longer needed, so they're discarded. This isn't hypothetical. This is what companies like Anthropic and others in the AI race have done at scale, purchasing massive volumes of books, scanning them, and destroying the originals in the process to build high-quality training datasets. And on the surface, it sounds like progress, because technically, nothing is lost. The words still exist, the ideas still exist. In fact, they now exist in a form that can be searched instantly, processed infinitely, combined with everything else humanity has ever written. So this isn't like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. That was a loss. This feels like evolution, or does it? Because what's happening isn't necessarily preservation. It's transformation and consolidation. So let's slow this down. When you read a book, you experience knowledge. You move through it, you struggle with it, you interpret it. The knowledge remains external, but the process becomes internal. You build something inside yourself. And when a system like Anthropic scans millions of books, it doesn't read them, it absorbs them. It turns them into patterns, into statistical relationships, into something that can generate answers without ever presenting the original structure of the idea. The book as a thing disappears. The book as fuel remains. And that's the shift. Books stop being endpoints, they become inputs. Now here's where it gets more interesting, and also more uncomfortable. Because when those physical books are destroyed, especially the obscure ones, the low print ones, the ones that weren't widely distributed, something subtle happens. Access narrows, not immediately, not obviously, but over time. If a book only existed in small numbers, and many of those copies are now gone, and the most complete version of it lives inside a private system, who actually controls that knowledge now? I mean, legally it's complicated. Copyright still exists, authors still have rights, publishers still have claims, but practically, the system becomes the most powerful holder of that knowledge, because it has the cleanest version, the most accessible version, and the most usable version. And you don't interact with the original anymore, you interact with the output. Now extend this forward. Imagine a future where the majority of human knowledge has been absorbed this way. Books, papers, articles, all fed into the system that can answer anything instantly. You wake up, you have a question, you ask. You don't search, you don't compare sources, you don't read 5 different perspectives. You get one answer. Clean, confident, immediate. And at first it feels like the peak of human progress. But then a new layer appears, because access to that system isn't neutral, it's controlled. Maybe not aggressively, but structurally. Better answers behind better models behind subscriptions, deeper insights behind enterprise tiers. Knowledge doesn't disappear, it becomes tiered. Now think about what that means. For most of human history, knowledge, once created, spread outwards. Books were printed, copied, shared. Libraries existed as decentralized hubs. You could walk into one, pick up a book, and read the exact words the author wrote. No mediation. Now, knowledge flows differently. It flows inwards into systems and then outwards again through interfaces. That's a completely different architecture, because once knowledge flows through a system, it can be filtered, reframed, prioritized, or quietly emitted. Not necessarily out of manipulation, sometimes just optimization, safety, alignment, efficiency. But emission doesn't announce itself. It just isn't there. Now bring in a second layer. What happens if the internet itself becomes less reliable over time? Not gone, just fragmented. Links decay, content is edited, platforms remove material. I mean, it already happens, but physical books used to act as anchors. If something mattered, it existed somewhere unchanged. But if those anchors are reduced and knowledge is increasingly centralized, your ability to verify weakens. You start to rely on the system not just for answers but for truth. And here's the most important shift of all. When verification becomes difficult, truth becomes automatic. You don't choose to trust, you default to it. And in that moment, something fundamental changes in how humans relate to knowledge. Now let's introduce the counter-argument, because this is where it gets nuanced. Maybe this isn't a bad thing. Maybe this is the most efficient way to preserve and utilize knowledge that we've created. Think about it. Books can decay, burn, or disappear. Digital systems can store everything. AI can connect ideas faster than any human ever could. And actually, you could reprint the books if you needed to. And in theory, this could prevent another Alexandria, not by protecting books, but by transcending them entirely. And yes, those books can be reprinted, reconstructed, and recreated from the data. But here's the catch. Reconstruction is not the same as independence, because if the only way to access or recreate the knowledge is through the system that holds it, you don't own it, you depend on it. And dependency creates leverage. Now zoom out to the bigger picture. This isn't just about books, it's about a transition from owning knowledge to accessing knowledge, from reading knowledge to receiving knowledge, from verifying knowledge to trusting knowledge. And once that transition is complete, something else becomes possible. Knowledge doesn't need to be deleted in a dramatic way, it can be adjusted quietly. A perspective removed here, an emphasis shifted there. A framing slightly altered, and because you no longer interact with the raw sources, you don't notice the difference. The system still works, it just works differently. Now bring it back to you, because this isn't just a macro story about AI companies and books, it's personal. It should unsettle you that something else could take all human knowledge and use it more efficiently than humanity itself, while deciding how you experience it. Not by force, but by convenience, because that's how the shift happens, not through resistance, but through preference. You will choose the faster answer, you will choose the faster path, and the easier one. You will choose the system that works, and slowly, without a clear moment where it happens, your relationship with knowledge will change. You won't notice what was lost, because you'll gain so much. Speed, clarity, capability. But beneath that gain is a trade. You gain access, you lose friction. And friction, the struggle to read, compare, question, that's where independent thinking is built. So maybe the real question isn't, are books being destroyed? Maybe it's what happens to a person who no longer needs to read them. Because in the end, they didn't burn the books, they made them unnecessary. And that might be the biggest shift of all.